Hi, everyone. Welcome back. Scott and Franz here, and we are very excited to have Michael Khalili, who is the Director of Product Marketing at WordPress VIP, joining us. Hey, Michael. Could you start by sharing with our audience a bit about your background and your current role at WordPress VIP?
Sure. So I've been working in the technology sector for, I think 20, 25 years now. I've kind of lost count. It's been a while. In a marketing role for about 20 of those, and in Martech for maybe the last 8, I'd say, something like that. So I am currently the director of product marketing here at WordPress VIP. So I and my team are responsible for taking our products to market. We kind of sit at the nexus of product and marketing, which is, I think, an interesting place to be as we talk about how people are using Martech to enable their marketing. So it's interesting because in my job, at some level, I I talk to people who do similar things to what I do day in and day out. And so I've been here about the last 3 years, coming up on it really soon, and very happy to join you today.
It's really, really great to have you here on Martech Day. And we just announced that, well, maybe no surprise, the Martech landscape is still huge.
Mm-hmm.
You've been around for a while. What's your take on this?
It's interesting, and maybe you can share it. I remember when the Martech landscape was it was a lot of vendors, but I could look at it from a distance and I could recognize the logos and I could be like, I know someone over there, and I used to work for that one, and this one I haven't heard of them. Let me go look at them. Now it's a bit of an eye chart. I think Scott, you and I were talking the other day, and I think you said it's like 20% bigger than it was last year or thereabouts. You can correct me if I'm a little off, but that's actually pretty amazing considering what the venture capital environment has been like, and the fact that like the rate of growth of business formation isn't what it was a few years ago, and yet even with those headwinds, it's more and more every year. And I think that is one of the opportunities for people who want to innovate in terms of how they're doing the Martech stack. But it's also a challenge because no person can look at that and actually parse. I would dare say that very few people, I'm sure somebody's going to say I can do that, but very few people could even parse all the categories, let alone all the vendors within each category on that chart. It's huge.
I confess I have a lot of trouble with that myself at this point. So if you find anyone who's really great at that, send them our way. They can help.
I'll send a referral your way if that happens.
A friend of mine said about the landscape, it's so overwhelming. It's not so much that it's solving a problem; it's showing you have one.
Mm-hmm. I think that's right. I think choosing what you need, choosing which vendor for each thing you need, and then making all of those pieces fit together like a jigsaw puzzle. And it's the hardest jigsaw puzzle. Like, I have kids and they do jigsaw puzzles and things like that, and walk in the park compared to building a Martech stack.
We're going to have to come up with a jigsaw puzzle version of the Martech. This is going to be the swag. All right. Well, actually, so that leads right on to another question I wanted to ask you about, because, given this crazy field, we often hear the case for consolidation, right? Can you just have folks consolidate? It'll make it easier for us to make choices. It'll simplify vendor relationships. And that, I think that's all true. But I'm curious, do you see a case for diversification? Is there an upside to this continuous stream of new Martech that we keep seeing?
I don't think it's a choice, is the truth. So I think, and I'm guilty of this. I'm definitely guilty of this. I thought the Martech landscape would evolve over time, like ERP or CRM or a lot of different categories that have existed of, hey, we need everything for our sales team. So we just go to Salesforce and they give us everything that we need for our sales team. Great, it's in a box. And maybe I get a couple of pieces off to the side, but 90% of it is there. And same thing with ERP. Same thing if we even go back to, technical solutions around, operating systems that took on more things, networking, et cetera, et cetera. That hasn't happened. And I don't know 100% why it hasn't happened, but it hasn't. And I think 10 years ago or 8 years ago, when I got into, I moved over towards the Martech side, the objective of a lot of companies, I worked for a number of startups, was, hey, we're going to grow and then we're going to win this little piece of the puzzle. And then the big guy will go acquire us and we'll all be rich and that'll be great. And that isn't the aspiration right now. I think either is that people are building these companies for the long haul, and they're going to be around for a while. The other piece of it from the customer side is it's turned out that what everyone needs isn't the same. Like, everyone has a sales forecast. Like, not everyone needs I worked for a company that largely did like mobile marketing years ago, a lot of push notifications and things like that. That matters for some people. And for 90% of folks, that really doesn't really matter. You don't need that. So there isn't the one size fits all that a lot of other business processes sort of entail. Marketing is kind of unique and idiosyncratic and fun. And as a result, I don't think that's a choice. I don't think you're ever going to be able to go to one vendor and say, just give me everything that's on the Apple cart.
So if that's let's say a given or something that we see coming back a lot, how do companies or how can companies deal with that if their external environment is constantly changing relentlessly? We're talking about customers, changing their mind or preferences. So how do you manage then your stack as a company and this evolution of it?
I'd say think about how you're going to weave the pieces together, not just how they fit together, but how you are going to weave the pieces together. And in some cases, it's pretty easy. Like there's a straightforward integration between A and B. In some cases, you're going to have to, in essence, build some sort of middle layer between like your customer facing front ends and the back end experiences or the back end systems that are powering all of that. Think about, I don't want to say the backplane, but the way that these things are going to plug in together, and then think about how they're going to manifest from the digital experience that people are going to have. Those are the two key pieces to me: is make sure you're thinking for the long term, and also make sure that you're planning for the fact that something new is going to come around next year, and something that you're using today will need to be replaced with something different in next year, 2 years, whatever.
Wow. Okay. So this is like right into a topic that, we're covering a lot here for Martech Day, which is composability, which has actually become, for what a strange, obscure word, has actually become sort of like the hot buzzword, in Martech these days. And there's different layers at which this happens. You could argue exactly what you're describing here of these, stacks that come together that have heterogeneous components. Part of that is you're composing your stack, you're composing a set of capabilities. But there's also a lot of cases where people are talking about composability, it's about, how we're actually building and delivering customer experiences, being able to pull from multiple things. What does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, it depends. It's different for every single business in terms of the piece parts and how it comes together. I'll give you an example of a business we worked with. I probably won't remember everything that was involved in composing it, but they were a customer that had a CMS that was handling their marketing content. They had digital asset management that was handling their digital assets, imagery, video, et cetera, They had a commerce piece of it, so they had shopping carts and all of that sort of stuff. They had a product information management because you needed to manage all the products in your catalog and all that stuff. They had two different marketing automation systems. One that was, I believe, more email-oriented, one more mobile-oriented, depending on how people were interacting with the brand. They had a customer service system. They had stuff for user-generated content. They had stuff for loyalty, et cetera, And they had to plug all of that in together and make it part of one customer experience that, I'm buying a consumer product, a shirt, cosmetics, whatever it is. And behind that one experience of me deciding I'm going to buy this shirt that I'm wearing right now is all of that stuff. And you need to make sure that it all works seamlessly. And I'll give you the worst part of it. If one part of that equation doesn't work, it's too slow, has an error, something goes wrong, it didn't work the way that you thought it would, the whole shebang breaks down. And so that's really challenging. And that's actually a problem that we're working to solve for a lot of organizations is, hey, a lot of my stuff is in a system like WordPress VIP that's a CMS, and that's a really key piece, but it's not the only key piece. How do we tie all of that together in a way that is seamless and that, frankly, is robust and flexible enough that as things change, you can roll with the punches?
So with composability for companies, what are challenges or risks, and how can marketers mitigate that?
Yeah, there's a few that jump to mind. The first is that, as I kind of mentioned, you're only as good as your weakest link. Like we all remember the one bad experience that we have and none of the normal experiences. So anything that goes wrong is highly problematic. And in that example that I just gave, any one of those systems can create that flaw, that problem, that negative experience. So one of the things that we're working on is sort of a middle layer that handles all of the integration, handles all the performance, handles all the caching, handles all the errors, handles everything, so you don't have to. And so that it all works seamlessly as an experience. That's one thing that really is a potential risk. Another, frankly, is just the pace of innovation. You can be out innovated by your competitor really, really easily the way things are going today. And so you have to be flexible enough to build more innovative experiences more quickly, and frankly react to an ever-changing market. And that's another piece that we're helping organizations really put the pieces together faster so that they don't get out innovated. And the third is stuff changes. I mean, one of the problems you have, and just being transparent and frank here, like when you had if you had a Martech landscape that had 15 Fortune 500 companies on it, you would be pretty sure that those companies had the resources, that they're going to be around next year, that everything's going to work, that they're going to compete with one another and all that. But that if you've chosen one vendor, you've chosen one vendor for the future. The reality of the situation is, I've been in some startups that failed. I've had some successes. I've also had some failures, and you need to plan for that eventuality and be ready to mitigate when some piece of your MarTech stack, either the company, it doesn't have to be that the company actually went out of business, but they don't have the resources to keep up. They put the thing in roughly maintenance mode, and suddenly you've got this thing that's been around and isn't going anywhere. The last piece that I will also mention is, for the example I gave before was a business that was kind of starting from scratch. That's great. A lot of businesses aren't starting from scratch. And so the question is, in addition to all the new things and the exciting pieces that you're looking at the MarTech landscape and trying to bring in, there's some diagram I saw or a picture that it basically was kind of like a castle made out of building blocks, and over here was one tiny slender block that said something an intern wrote in 1995, and that was holding the whole thing up. How do you deal with those things you can't get rid of that are critical for you? And we have customers that we work with that have stuff that frankly wasn't engineered for the modern day, and that you have to mitigate, and then you have to figure out, because that could be the weakest link.
That's a great list, a great overview of risks that we can run into. And many MarTech stacks have products from different vendors that may have overlaps in functionality. So how can we deal with that? Is that always bad? Is that always good? Are there scenarios where it makes sense?
I think in most cases it's just the reality. The way I would look at it is, go to vendors and get the things that you need from those vendors. I'd be lying if I said people in my role, product marketers, aren't trying to find ways to get additional kind of wallet share out of you. Sometimes it's fine. If you've got a vendor, not me, that has A, B, and C, and honestly, C isn't the best, but you don't need the best for C, and they're tossing it in and it works for you, great. But if C isn't the right thing for you, often you're not going to be able to get rid of C from a commercial standpoint, as long as you're economically getting value, and that's really a procurement question. Okay, if A plus B is worth more to you than what you're paying for A plus B, okay, C's extra baggage. Make sure it's not blocking anything along the way or like creating a bottleneck, but it doesn't hurt. It's like trying to remember, like the appendix is tonsils. I think they've now found a use for, but there are parts of the human body that we don't really know what they're for, and if we remove them, like, we don't break. But I'm not running out to the doctor to have my tonsils out and my appendix removed this afternoon. They're fine. I will continue living.
Love that. All right, I want to take this in a different direction, because, all right, the core WordPress software is arguably one of the most successful open source projects in the history of the web. And we don't see a lot of open source solutions in MarTech. I'm curious as to why you think that is, but what are the advantages of having a business that's rooted on an open source project? What's the benefits to customers? What's the benefits in your own go-to-market?
So there's three ways I could go with this question. It's a great question. I think I'm going to go with all of them. Number one is, I would challenge that a little bit, in that I think there is a lot of open source in MarTech. You just don't know it. And the reason is because a lot of the vendors that show up in the landscape under the covers are using a lot of open source. Now they're putting their own spin on things. They're building on top of it. They've got, their unique secret sauce. But I worked for a lot of Martech companies, and I can't think of a single one that had no open source in the thing that that was providing service to you. It was just under the hood. You didn't know it was there, but it was there. So that's sort of one piece. A second piece, though, in terms of why don't people pick things that are explicitly open source as opposed to just sort of clandestine open source, if you can call it that. I think people in marketing just want to get things done. And there's a pragmatism from the technical side, and there's a pragmatism from the marketing side. Like the pragmatism for the technical side is, I don't have to build this. Like if it's open source, it's going to be well maintained. It's going to be flexible, et cetera, et cetera. Like there's a lot of advantages for a marketer. It's like, okay, I'm going to evaluate A, B, and C based upon its characteristics. I'm not thinking about those kind of long-term architectural, considerations. I'd say we probably should be more than we are. But the reality is we're all just trying to do our jobs. Mm-hmm. Now, the third piece is I do think that there are a lot of advantages to open source. I think WordPress is a good example of it. Everything that I've said to this point is about openness. I mean, it's the core of what we believe in as an organization, whether it's open source, open standards, open integration, open frameworks. Like having that openness helps you in the long run. And I would challenge, WordPress has been around for 20 years now. And if you think about, the Martech landscape 20 years ago, it was radically, radically different. If you think of how businesses operated 20 years ago, it was radically, radically different. The reason that WordPress has managed to stay relevant and really, stay on the forefront with a lot of those changes is because of open source. Mm-hmm. It is because it's so flexible and people can contribute to it, and it's always looking around and serving the community. It's frankly a little bit of a virtuous cycle as well. 43% of the web runs on WordPress today. So there's a lot of voices that we're hearing. And that really keeps things fresh, relevant, and modern, and keeps organizations going. The other last piece of it that I would highlight is, obviously I'm from WordPress VIP, but there are other folks that build on WordPress. I have to earn the business of our customers every single day. You can walk away, and we hope you don't, but you can, and your site won't break. You can walk away with it and put it somewhere else and run it. And so we have to be the best, because otherwise people have that option. There's no, oh, we've got your data now and it's ours and you're not getting it. And, oh, you want to go switch to another vendor? You're going to have to rebuild 10 years worth of stuff that you've built on our platform now. Openness means openness.
Yeah, wow. We have covered a lot of ground, but still one big topic of our time, not yet, which is AI. So what's happening in your part of the Martech world with AI that really makes you excited?
Yeah, I've been joking that every conversation has to, or every sentence has to have a noun, a verb, and AI these days. There's a lot happening in AI. I mean, I think the potential around AI is huge. I think the question is, where do you get started? And ChatGPT, I think, opened everyone's eyes to what's possible. And what we've seen since that time is there are certain obvious things that people did. I mean, and we did them too. We said, oh, let's integrate ChatGPT with the CMS. I can feed a prompt and it'll generate a web page for me. Awesome. So did a lot of other vendors. And it's useful. It's great. It's not the be all and end all. The question I would have around AI that I think everyone should think about is what are the things that you want to solve most imminently, the things that are most important to you, and what is the data that you need to have and to think about in order to do that. So we actually just a few weeks ago released a new AI-driven product as part of our Parsley Content Helper, which is part of our platform. And what we are doing is we are looking at the customer's content, all of it, everything you've written, and we've looked at their performance data. And there's ways that we're sending snippets and not sharing all of your data. So yes, there's a lot that's behind the hood around privacy around this. But what we're basically doing is we're using AI in two ways. We're using AI to say, I have a new thing that I'm creating. What's similar to it? And then what of that performs the best? And then I'm using that data to say, what's the headline that I could create for that, the H1 that would perform best for this content that I've created, brand new? What are the links that I should put in to optimize my SEO? Things like that. What is the summary that should show up in Google that will get the most clicks? So things like that are AI, but then are also thinking about the problem you want to solve, which is basically get more eyeballs, get those people engaged more and converting more, and using data that's specific to you and data that's tied to performance to get to that end goal. That's one example. I think there's going to be a bajillion of those in the next few years. The question is, where do you start? And so I would think through it from the perspective of what do you need to achieve? What's the data that you have that would help you achieve it? And talk to your vendors. I mean, they definitely have ideas too. There's going to be a lot of really good ideas in the next few years. There's going to be even more horrible ideas in the next few years. That's just the reality.
Going to be a very interesting evolution here these next few years. Well, yeah. Michael, I know Frans and I would be delighted to spend hours talking with you about this. Definitely feel a kindred spirit in the way you think about this. But we are at our time limit for today. Just want to thank you again for having this chat with us, sharing your perspective. Thank you to WordPress VIP for being a sponsor of Martech Day. And yeah, excited to see where you take things in the year ahead.
Thanks a lot.